All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donnie Mahan. I'm running for Leander City Council Place 4. First, I want to state that this entire video is being shot on my cell phone by Cameron DeJong, and it costs me nothing to make. Therefore, it's not a paid political ad that has required disclosure by the TEC. I'm the sole author of this, and I highly approve of this message. Also, neither Annette, who's here with me, nor Cameron know the content of this message prior to me filming it, so you may see it or hear some reactions to it. Lastly, I did prepare a script. It's pretty lengthy and I have a bunch to cover, and I want to make sure that I get through every point as they're all very important to me. I also wanted to make sure I'm as objective as possible, so my apologies for not being more off the cuff as I normally would like to be, but I can't mess this up. It's too important. I've stated on several occasions that I'm not a politician, and though I'm seeking political office, I don't think there's a win at all costs attitude about me, because there is a price that's too high to pay to win. And too often we see politicians willing to turn their backs on things that they know is wrong in order to keep their base happy. But that's not the right thing to do. As an officer in the Army, I was taught that what we allow to happen, we condone. And there have been some things during this campaign that I certainly don't condone. I even used the case that was in P&Z recently to highlight that I will always do what I feel is the right thing to do, even if it costs me votes. And today's no different. I can't stay silent about this any longer, and what I'm about to say will undoubtedly cost me votes. It's going to anger somebody. It has to be said. It's the right thing to do. So, today, I want to have a chat about honor and integrity. First, let's look at the definition of them. So, sorry guys, you're gonna have to bear with me for a second till I get to the highlights. But honor, adherence to what is right or to a conventional standard of conduct. Integrity, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles and moral uprightness. And in contrast, the definition of unethical is not morally correct. And before I get too further on, I also wanted to cover the Code of Fair campaign practices that all candidates signed as a part of their application to run for council. And I want you to keep these in mind as I go through what follows. Specifically, I want to highlight points 1, 2, 4, 5, and 7. Yeah, there's a lot. Sorry, Annette. Number 1, I will conduct the campaign openly and publicly and limit attacks on my opponent to legitimate challenges to my opponent's record and stated positions on issues. First one. 2, I will not use or permit the use of character defamation, whispering campaigns, libel, slander, or scurrilous attacks on any candidate or the candidate's personal or family life. Number 4, I will not use campaign material of any sort that misrepresents, distorts, otherwise falsifies the facts, nor will I use malicious or unfounded accusations that aim at creating or exploiting doubts without justification as to the personal integrity or patriotism of my opponent. 5, I will not undertake or condone any dishonest or unethical practice that lends to corrupt or undermine our system of free elections, or that hampers or prevents the full and free expression of the will of the voters, including any activity aimed at intimidating voters or discouraging them from voting. And number 7, I will immediately and publicly repudiate methods and tactics that may come from others that I have pledged not to use or condone. I shall take firm action against any subordinate who violates any provision of this code or the laws governing the elections. So point number 7, that last one, where it states, I will immediately and publicly repudiate methods and tactics that may come from others that I have pledged not to use or condone. That's why I'm making this video, because I'm about to publicly repudiate methods and tactics that I pledged not to use or condone. So as you may have figured out already, I'm planning to discuss another candidate. In this case, I plan to discuss someone that's not even running against me. I'm talking about Mike Sanders. Everything I'm about to say is verifiable. Either I've witnessed it or heard it personally, or it's a matter of public record in some cases. So let's go through the list of things that Mike has done that I don't condone and I'm denouncing. First, and I'm going to lead with the biggest one, honestly, in my opinion, Mike recorded a private conversation with Annette. While it isn't illegal in Texas, as Texas is a one-party consent state, it isn't very ethical and it's not honorable at all. And if you don't believe me, just ask the Republican Party of Texas Chairman, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, his thoughts. Or read what's been posted on email from Lieutenant Colonel West to Mike on the subject. And I've seen the email and verified its validity. And there's more to it that wasn't shared, and it only gets worse than what you've already seen, if you've bothered to go look for it. But what gets me more than the recording of a conversation is that he made copies of it on a USB drive and was passing them out to people to try to convince them that Annette was not who she says she is. So prior to the election, I'd spent a few hours with Annette, P&Z, and it wasn't a lot. But through this election, I've spent a whole lot of time with Annette. And I'll tell you one thing, Annette is exactly who she says she is. She's someone that loves this city. She works harder than anyone I've seen. And she votes the way she feels is best for our city. She's absolutely conservative and even sought endorsements from the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party. And she's never tried to hide that. But Mike used this conversation to insinuate that she voted for Bernie Sanders in the 2016 Democratic primary. So actually, that's actually why I have Annette here today. I want to ask you a question, Annette. Did you vote for Bernie in the 2016 Democratic primary?
No, I did not.
There you go. Insinuate all you want, but there's the source of truth. What's happened is that Mike touted that he's the only conservative Republican candidate willing to say such during this campaign, which also isn't true. He's just the only one that put it out all over the place and used it as a campaign point, regardless of how it impacted others. I have always said that I'm conservative. I'm not hiding from that. I'm just not shouting it at people either. I want clean water. I want sound infrastructure, strategic developments, and lower taxes just like most everyone else. And I plan to spend money like it's the citizens' money. And I take that responsibility very seriously. All right, next. Okay, so off from that one. Let's talk about signs. So you see our big 4x8 signs all over town? Well, the rules that we were all told when we signed up for this election is that we have to have written permission to put up one of those signs. We were all briefed this. I know at least two instances, at least two that I can verify, that Mike's put up a sign and the property owner doesn't want them there. In one case, the owner took the sign down. So what happened? Mike put it back up. The owner took it down a second time. And I was told today that another owner has removed signs from his property as well that wasn't asked for permission. But speaking of signs, more recently, on an April 30th Facebook post, Mike said that one candidate put signs directly in front of his while placing them at the polling locations, and went on to say she seems to enjoy acting without any ethical compass. He's talking about Annette, by the way. So I'm like, pot kettle black much? He then went on to say it's probably not against the law, but most people who have any type of conscience at all would not place their sign directly in front of another person's sign. That's kind of like stepping right in front of someone who is in line at a grocery store. Not really against the law, but certainly shows what type of person she is. I'm going to use your phone to hold the one. What he failed to mention is that the rules state that you can't place your signs, this would be a sign, until 12 hours before the polling locations open. So what does he do to skirt this rule? He places H stakes. So this is an H stake. He places H stakes in the ground, which are part of the sign, by the way. Because when you put it together, you need this to create the sign. This is not going to stand up, right? It's just going to fall, right? This is part of the sign. So he places it in the ground to mark his territory. Or he pounds in T stakes, those big green poles that hold larger signs, so that when the time is right, at that 12-hour mark, he can just go back and attach the actual sign. So to use his own analogy, it's kind of like putting your empty shopping cart in the long line at the grocery store, then go shopping, so that when you come back and there are a dozen people behind you, you're still got your spot in line. But hey, you've got your space. Probably not against the law, but it certainly shows what type of person he is. Again, using his own analogy to describe it. On election day at the library, Mike was talking to me. And he shared that he had talked to Esmeralda and said that he would be happy to be in a runoff with her because she had run a clean campaign, unlike Annette. What? I'm not certain he really thought about that and who he was talking to, because throughout the entire campaign, we were running together. So he was implicating me as well. And I'm pretty sure I run a pretty clean campaign. Annette ran a clean campaign and always followed every single rule. I'm not certain that the same can be said about Mike, but I'll leave that up to you to figure out. But for me, it's clear, and the evidence is there. And before I go further, I want to stop and say this. Mike, you aren't going to like this video. You probably already don't, but I'm okay with that. But if you want to come after someone, come after me, because Annette is way out of your league. And if you do come after me, you better come with more than just words you use as a tagline like honor and integrity, because I have those in spades, and you, sir, are lacking in both by the same amount. So back to this. Let's not forget about the March 4th City Council meeting where Mike used public comments to promote his own campaign. Or the City Council meeting where he insinuated that there are council members that are breaking the Open Meetings Act. He had the audacity to get up there and lecture to them by saying there was an event where the council members asked the public to leave, and I'm using quotes for the public, and that council needs to be careful of that when there's a quorum and asking the public to leave, because the public needs to be there, needs to be allowed to stay to ensure that no city business is being talked about. So let's talk about what really happened. What event was Mike talking about? I was there. So he's talking about an informal gathering that happened after a council meeting over at the Leander Beer Market. Mayor Hill, Catherine Battalion Parker, and Annette were there. I thought Marcy was there as well, but she said she wasn't, so there was no quorum to begin with. But I digress. I was there. Dr. Frank Stiles was there. There was another citizen who was there, and I can't remember his name. As we were talking, Mike comes up and sits down right in front of Annette. I was at the end of the table. I was talking to Troy, so I continued to do so, trying not to listen or know what was being said, to be honest. Then in a calm demeanor, I hear Catherine say, "Mike, you were not invited. You need to leave." Words to that effect. Mike didn't leave. Then a minute or so later, I hear Annette go off on him. It's actually the first time I've ever seen, and the only time I've ever seen that, saying that he's a liar and needs to stop spreading lies about her. So Troy asked him in a bit sterner voice and told him that he needs to leave. Again, Mike didn't leave. Annette got up and left. Other council members got up and left. Eventually, I was the only other one outside, and I was the one talking to Mike. So saying that the public was asked to leave is not truthful. The public wasn't asked to leave, just Mike Sanders. Because last time I checked, I'm the public. I'm not an elected official, and I was never asked to leave. But at the end of the day, he never left. So I'm not sure what his beef was anyway, except to make a point and to throw people under the bus in the process. He was distorting the truth for his own personal gain at the expense of the sitting city council members. He cast doubt on all their integrity. I've been around this group of current city council for a lot over the past several months. And there was a quorum many times. However, never, not once, have they ever violated the Open Meetings Act, either accidentally or on purpose. These are smart folks. Regardless of whether or not you agree with them, they know the rules and they always follow them. On April 8th, Mike posted on his Facebook page, he stated that City Council has increased the debt to the city by almost $100 million without voter input. He even cited this year's annual budget, go to page 283, he commented, as his source. As a part of the Excel chart that he created, wasn't a part of the presentation, to show debt and the years incurred, he showed almost half of it, about $46 million, was from 2020. What he failed to read in the city's financial report on page V, yes, way before they start numbering pages, and 290 pages before page 283, was a statement that the city incurred no additional debt in 2020 and in fact restructured some of the existing debt at a significant savings, which he was trying to pass off as additional debt. So someone who can't read a financial report is not someone I want serving and making decisions about budgets, debts, etc. that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Or maybe he did read it and he intentionally omitted it because it didn't fit the narrative. Whichever is the case, lack of knowledge or intentional deception, it's not someone I want making budgetary decisions for the city. And what makes it worse is his doubling and tripling down on this line of thought, saying that the city, thus the sitting council, was saddling the city with debt in several subsequent Facebook posts. And lastly, so if you made it this far, good for you. On the April 15th City Council meeting, Mike spoke out against the deep water intake Phase 2, as it was $120 million that the city was incurring in debt, and it should be left up to the voters. What he doesn't share is that this deal was already done. If we didn't cover our portion, we'd be sued by the other two cities, Round Rock and Cedar Park. And we would lose that legal battle and have to pay legal fees and still do the deep water intake Phase 2, right? Then he went on his Facebook page and said that we should not have utilized the Texas plan that allows us to take out a loan using the better rate that the state of Texas has. And by doing so, our credit rating and ability to take on future debt would be impacted. Yes, Mr. Powers did say that night. But what he omitted was a question by Annette, was that if we didn't do it, would it cost the city more to take on the debt that we're gonna have to take on anyway? And the answer was yes. Not only was it yes, but it was later reported that it would cost the city an estimated $10 million more to take on this debt had that not been approved. But again, the fiscal conservative doesn't want to spend anything even though the deal was already made. So he would have plunged the city into millions more in debt as a result of a worse interest rate and after a legal battle that we would assuredly lose. What's conservative about that? I don't know. But what I do know is that it's bad for the city. Mike definitely doesn't know what it means or how to begin governing our city. And his tactics show that his lack of integrity and honor are all just greater indicators that he should not be elected. Look, if we can't police our own ranks, how are we any better than anyone else? Republicans like Mike are bad for the party. We can't have a win-at-all-cost attitude, grin and bear it, and turn our heads away from the smell. Some costs are too much to bear. I know this is going to anger some, and I'm okay with that. I know it's going to alienate me from some, and I'm also okay with that. I'm going to get called a rhino, and that's probably the best of names I'm going to be called after this. And this may cost me the election. So be it. This is much bigger than me, and it's much bigger than the seat 4. I can't keep quiet any longer. This is the right thing to do, regardless of the political fallout. I want you to vote for me, and I know the situation this puts some of you in. So I'm not asking you to vote for Esmeralda. But what I am asking is that you do not vote for Mike Sanders. He's bad for Leander, and if you're a Republican or a conservative, he's bad for the party and should never hold any office, board, commission, or committee seat in our city or anywhere else ever. Let the vote difference between our two races be a huge signal to both him and others that this type of behavior is not acceptable and will not be tolerated. Again, my name is Donnie Mahan. I'm running for Leander City Council Place 4, and I wholeheartedly approve this message.